Welcome to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in Iran and the Middle East in the past 24 hours. Today's lead is the Strait of Hormuz, but not just as a shipping lane. The update is that Hormuz has become the negotiating table, the pressure valve, and the hostage all at once. The diplomatic fight is now about who gets to define control. Iran is trying to turn the strait into a managed access waterway under what it calls Iranian arrangements, possibly with Oman involved. Washington is saying no chance. President Trump rejected reports of a draft arrangement that would let Iran and Oman coordinate passage, saying the strait must stay open to everyone and that no single country will control it. Then he went further, warning Oman in language that landed like someone threw a folding chair into a mediation room. Oman has long been a quiet broker in regional diplomacy, so that remark caused a fresh round of blowback from Tehran, which called the threat dangerous and bullying. The U.S. also moved this from rhetoric into sanctions. Washington added Iran's Persian Gulf Strait Authority to its sanctions list. That matters because Tehran is not simply saying, "We want safer shipping." It has created a body to manage requests for passage through one of the world's most important choke points. The U.S. view is that this looks like an IRGC-adjacent shakedown operation, dressed up as maritime administration. Very classy, if your goal is to make Lloyd's of London, tanker captains, and half the global energy market develop a stress twitch. The larger negotiation is still alive, but it is not clean. Iran wants money early. The U.S. wants nuclear concessions first. Tehran is demanding access to frozen assets, with reporting pointing to at least $12 billion as an initial ask. Washington's position is essentially no movement on highly enriched uranium, no money. That sequencing dispute is the whole plot. If Iran gets funds before serious nuclear limits, it gains economic oxygen while pushing the hardest security questions into round two. If Iran gives up nuclear leverage first, the regime risks looking like it got squeezed. Nobody in Tehran wants to appear in the sequel, titled Maximum Pressure. We actually felt it. Trump is trying to show he can wait Iran out. At a cabinet meeting, he said Iranian leaders miscalculated if they thought U.S. midterm pressure would push him into a softer deal. He said he does not care about the midterms, even as high gasoline prices and inflation remain politically radioactive. Secretary of State Marco Rubio kept the official message more controlled, saying diplomacy is still the first option, but Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. So the U.S. posture is still two-track. Talk at the table, squeeze on the water, and keep the hammer visible. This is an update on the ceasefire story we have been tracking. Both sides are still using force while insisting they are not blowing up the diplomatic track. U.S. forces struck near Bandar Abbas after Iranian drones threatened U.S. and commercial vessels around Hormuz. Iran's Revolutionary Guard then said it targeted a U.S. base in response. Kuwait reported hostile missile and drone threats and said its air defenses were intercepting them. The key point is not the hardware. The key point is that the ceasefire now depends on both sides accepting limited strikes as somehow compatible with limited peace. That is not a sturdy arrangement. That is a coffee table with 3 legs and a candle on it. Iran is also trying to convert endurance into leverage. Regime-linked commentary is talking about turning military success into political gains. The message to Iranian elites and hardliners is that the country absorbed U.S. and Israeli pressure, kept the strait central, and now deserves concessions. At the same time, reporting points to reconstitution work at the Yazd missile base, including repairs around tunnels, roadwork, and replacement activity. In plain terms, Tehran is using the pause to rebuild pieces of the military toolkit while negotiating over cash and sanctions. That is exactly why early asset release is so sensitive in Washington and Jerusalem. Inside Iran, the domestic security picture is getting sharper. The regime is warning about U.S.-Israeli hybrid warfare, which in Tehran's vocabulary includes sabotage, weapons smuggling, media activity, ethnic tension, labor unrest, and economic pressure. President Masoud Pezeshkian called the economy the main battlefield. That is a big admission. After months of war, sanctions, protests, and shortages, the regime sees public frustration as a security front. The partial return of internet access after 88 days of blackout did not produce a national victory lap. Many Iranians described it as limited, monitored, and nowhere near enough to restore work or trust. One could say the regime gave people a window and then stood behind them holding the blinds. Israel, meanwhile, is pushing hard on the regional fronts that could complicate any U.S.-Iran package. In Lebanon, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is deepening operations against Hezbollah. Israeli forces have moved beyond positions they held after the mid-April ceasefire, while Hezbollah is claiming attacks on Israeli troops and armor near the Litani River area. The strategic issue is Lebanon's role in the bigger bargain. Iran wants Lebanon covered by any broader settlement. Israel appears determined to weaken Hezbollah and shape the security map before diplomats freeze the picture. That is not background noise. That is one of the biggest potential spoilers. Gaza is also back near the center of the political blast radius. Israel said it killed Mohammed Odeh, Hamas's military commander, after previously saying it killed Izzeldin al-Haddad. More explosive politically, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said a plan for large-scale Palestinian voluntary migration from Gaza will move forward at the right time and in the right manner. Human rights groups and lawyers argue that under current wartime conditions, calling such departures voluntary does not make them voluntary. That issue could collide with Trump's ceasefire framework for Gaza and with any broader push for regional normalization. The energy market is reading all this like a horror script, with crude oil as the narrator. Brent jumped near $98 as the U.S. and Iran traded strikes and Kuwait activated air defenses. European officials warned that jet fuel markets could tighten if the Hormuz situation does not improve within weeks. Reuters reported that average daily crossings through the strait are down dramatically from pre-war levels. And even if a deal lands, shipping does not restart like someone flipped a studio light switch. Insurers need confidence. Crews are stranded. Tankers are backed up. Mines may need clearing. Some ships are already moving with transponders off, which is great if your goal is to make maritime tracking analysts reach for the extra espresso. Iran is hurting, but China continues to give Tehran a financial escape route. A major investigation documented Iranian oil moving through shadow fleet transfers off Malaysia, where tankers hide names, switch flags, and hand off crude before it heads toward Chinese refineries. Iran reportedly earned about $31 billion from oil sales to China last year. That is not pocket change. Beijing may complain about U.S. sanctions, but the practical effect is that China helps keep Iran's cash machine from completely freezing. It is a familiar authoritarian buddy system. Deny, reroute, repaint the hull, cash the check. One more maritime warning light. Drone attacks were reported against 3 tankers in the Black Sea near Turkey. No one immediately claimed responsibility, but Russia and Ukraine have both targeted ports and shipping during the war. Add that to Hormuz, and the wider pattern is obvious. Sea lanes are becoming pressure points again. Energy, sanctions evasion, drones, insurance, and great power competition are all crashing into the same shipping map. Diplomacy is still on the board, but the water is getting rough, and everybody can see the storm clouds forming. Thank you for listening and for contributing to the growth of this community. If you found the show valuable, a review or a thoughtful comment helps extend its reach to others. For more in-depth analysis, we publish a daily intel brief on Substack, restrictedhandling.substack.com, covering Russia, China, Iran, the Middle East, and the DPRK. Take care and have a great day.